my name's Danni Wade, founder of Beat the Overwhelm. I'm a wife and been married for over a decade. I've got two girls who are now 9 and 8. Still work full time, so still in a day job, work in sales. I've been in sales for over 21 years, now in kind of MarTech data sales role. I'm really into my fitness, so that's where you find me in the spare time that I have. I'm a property investor, and as I said, Beat the Overwhelm, this is my main passion and that I'm developing and have just built over the last 18 months or so, a 9-step program to help you beat the overwhelm. So yeah, that's me. I think we'll get into more of, I guess, what brought me to this point of building this as we go through the conversation.
Absolutely. And I guess my first question for you is, what is it like to feel overwhelmed? What is that?
Oh, big question. I think fundamentally it comes down to feeling in control. And there are lots of different levels when it comes to overwhelm. I think there has to be a certain amount of overwhelm, because that's just us taking a moment to, oh, this is feeling a bit much. Take a step back, take a deep breath, and figure out what you're going to do to make things easier for yourself. Is that getting some help? Is that looking at the situation from a different perspective? Those are the kind of the basic feelings of overwhelm. And then you've got the other end of burnout. And that's what you need to become more self-aware to ensure that you don't get to burnout. And I guess I was one of those people that thought burnout would not happen to me. Even when it happened and I started confiding in some friends, they were like, no way. Like, everyone saw me as that person that had it all together on the surface. So it was a little bit of a shock to hit that point. And for me, that meant feeling like I was in a fog, incapable of making decisions. And I'm usually very decisive. And that, again, I don't want to kind of say exactly what it is, because everyone experiences things in different ways. But for me, it was just going through a period of just feeling a bit like a zombie, to be honest. And I just needed to pull myself out of that, because even though I was in quite this low state, I still had these ambitions and I didn't want to give up on that. So it was really having to take a step back and go, okay, what's working, what isn't, how do I make some changes to get, pick myself up and get back on track.
That's a good explanation, because as you're explaining that to me, a few scenarios in my own life have come up. And I remember one vividly where I felt, and I'll let you comment as this is a form of feeling overwhelmed, is I felt I was losing control of certain things that I always had a strong control over. And by that, I mean, it's when I was gearing up to start my own business 2 years ago, well, 2.5 years ago now. I was relying on other people to realize my dream. And as I was doing that, I began to lose control of a dream that I always had. And it was interesting looking back, because you realize no one should ever have the power to take your dream from you, or to at least you're wrestling control over. And when I took a step back and I said, wait a minute, Turin, what are you doing? This is what you want to do. You've always had control. Your thoughts are playing a factor in this, because I think when we start to feel overwhelmed, we start to think, maybe I can't do this. Maybe this is too daunting of a task. Maybe, and I think this is the destroyer of so many dreams, maybe I'm going to fail. And if I do fail, how are people going to view me?
Yeah.
Do you think that's forms of overwhelmed as you described it? Because that's what it is to me.
Yeah, you articulated that so well. So what in the 9 steps that I've built to get someone out of overwhelm, is the first thing is we start with you, we start with the mindset, because everything begins with you. And it's that level of self-belief. So that's the first thing, is like building your self-belief back up, looking at all the things you have achieved in the past, all the things you've overcome as well, because there's a lot of strength that comes from those situations. And then we tackle that inner voice. We all have it, and we don't talk about it enough. We're our own worst enemy. In fact, when you do something silly, the way you can beat yourself up, you wouldn't talk to your worst enemy the way you talk to yourself sometimes.
That's
So
right.
that's a huge element, is taking control of yourself before you start to control other things. And life becomes a lot easier when you get that piece under control, definitely.
When you mentioned the 9 steps, right, to help those who overcome this, is that how personal to you are those 9 steps, and how much of your own experiences, maybe as someone that was dating, that eventually became a wife, someone that was a wife and then eventually became a mother, or all three combined, like how much of your own personal experiences and your values, I guess, are in those 9 steps that that you have created?
It's within everything. I couldn't even pinpoint areas. I made a I've always been into self-development and been very curious about how the mind works, and why some succeed and some don't. So it was something I always was reading and very interested in. But I took a big shift, I'd say in 2015, to then, instead of just reading the books, actually going on the courses and immersing myself in everything to do with self-development. And this has come from my own experiences of taking all of the best bits from all of the different courses, the books, the tools. So everything has a tool to it. Some of it I've built, some of it is something that I found works very, very effectively. So if it isn't broken, don't fix it. But it's just putting all of these pieces together, and then I've tested it with loads of different people as well, and taken feedback and run masterminds to just really build the sequence of events that I feel needs to happen to ensure that it's a permanent change. Because we can all do something for 4 to 6 weeks. That's the easy part. It's making sure that we are consistent with it, moving forward.
And you mentioned a good point, because earlier at the top of the show you mentioned into fitness. It's so easy to do the 4 to 6 weeks plan, right? You have the four to
Yeah.
six weeks diet. You have the 4 to 6 weeks lose 10 pounds. You have all these content, this information being thrown at you, because we can do many things for a short period of time,
Yeah.
but the challenge is to do it over a longer period of time, to go from, okay, this is a habit, to behavior, to a lifestyle.
Yeah.
And I look at many of my friends who, over the last, I want to say 2 years, they got married. One of my friends, she got married, and then she ended up, I was just at her virtual baby shower,
Oh,
baby reveal, right? So it's kind of cool. They had this big box on their driveway, they cranked it, and it shot out the colors, either blue
amazing.
or pink, right? So it's cute. A little bit different, but cute. But I look at that, and she was going through a difficult time. Leading up to her becoming married, based on the conversation, I would identify it was overwhelmed. Like she has, yeah, she has anxiety as well, but she was feeling overwhelmed. She's like, "Am I going to be a good partner to the person I'm going to marry? Am I going to be a good wife? Can I see myself as a mother?" These are questions that she was going on in her mind.
Mm.
And then when she realized that she was pregnant after, when they started planning to create a child, and she ended up getting pregnant, it's the same conversations in her mind, right? And to your point, if we could just tune that out and say that, you know what, you got this. You've been successful in the past. You've been good at it before. There's no reason why you're not going to be good at it now. And the reason why I mention that, and is to ask you, when you're going down your path, for the mothers out there, for the wives out there, or the mothers to be, or the ones who are engaged, did you experience that in the two situations that you ultimately became, as a wife and maybe as a mother?
Absolutely. And I think that's normal. And there's different levels of it. I think everyone would have that internal dialogue with themselves, or if you're lucky enough to have people around you where you're comfortable having that dialogue with someone else, then I think that's a healthy thing. It's just showing, especially when it's other people involved, that you're wanting to do your best. Where it becomes unhealthy, and this is something I see a lot, and I was definitely guilty of this, is having unrealistic expectations of yourself. And that's where it gets messy, and that's where most of us tip the balance. We look, and especially nowadays, we'll look at others and we have one window into their life, and we see all of the perfect things, and we look at everyone else with rose tinted glasses, and then we look at ourselves with scrutiny and pick up on all of our faults and think, well, I'm not going to be as good as that other person that you have up on a pedestal. So that's where the unrealistic expectations come in, and that's where that can lead to an overwhelm, which is really, really unhealthy. And again, that's a whole module. That's a whole exercise to look at. Everyone has a lot going on, and regardless of your situation, most people have a lot going on. So it's looking at your individual position and situation and stage of life to figure out what's going to work for you. There isn't a one size fits all for anything. Everyone is unique, but there are some fundamental things, if we can get right in the way we manage our own expectations, especially of ourselves, because those are always sky high, then that's, everything else becomes a bit easier. And it's just remembering that no one's perfect. Like, no one, even the people you admire the most, they are just another human being, and we all have our flaws, and that's okay. It's just, yes, we want to be ourselves, our best selves, but we need to just take a moment to realize we can't be perfect.
I think it goes back to that old joke, right? That when you look at someone that you think is perfect, someone that you admire, it goes. The joke is, well, they put their pants on their underwear one leg at a time, like everyone else, right?
Yeah.
So you may think that they're so much more different than you or better than you, but some of the things that are pretty basic, like getting dressed in the morning, they're getting dressed the same way. There isn't anything special about it. There isn't anything amazing. And you made a good point where expectations, where are they coming from? Is it that I say, okay, you know what? I have Danny in front of me. I'm looking, okay, her house looks pretty nice. It's, I see the background there. It's better than mine. Now I'm raising my expectation based on you, right? I don't know how you have achieved that. I don't know how hard you've worked for it. I just see the finished product. And I think a lot of us, especially with the rise of social media, now that we're in the house so much more, what are we doing? Probably watching more TV, probably spending more time on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, whatever. And we're comparing ourselves because we're at a point where so many people has had so much taken from them in the last year.
Yeah.
So we look to our neighbor to the left, and if they're doing better, now it feels even more impactful because 2 years ago, when the majority of us were successful in our own right, now we may not have that. And in your experience and the clients that you have, how much of their issues of overwhelm or their personal journey where they're hitting a plateau, how much is that due to them just looking at others and saying that, you know what? Why can't I be like this person? How much how much of that is actually happening based on the people you've come in contact with?
Everyone. It's everyone. And I've been asked as well, it's like, well, how can you be doing all of these things? And it's like, well, I didn't just wake up one day and decide I was going to be a property investor and decide I was going to do all of these things. These are things that have been blood, sweat and tears to get it to that stage. And so I'm always more than open to share the journey that it's taken. And actually, if I'd have decided to do all of these things at the same time, none of it would have happened. Like, everything is a journey. And as you say, people see the finished product and have zero idea just how much work has gone into it. I mean, one day I do want to have my own podcast, but yeah, that's not going to happen in the short term. I know I can't take that on right now. So like, every time someone else has got a podcast up and running, I really admire that. But I know it's going to be hard, but I have no idea until I go through the journey myself, and then I'll have even more respect for them. So I think with everything, that comparison piece is so toxic. And I actually talk about this a lot, because it's, how can you be jealous of someone when you haven't even tried to put the same level of effort into it? Like, if you're going for the same thing, try and understand the journey, try and understand the steps that need to be taken. And because it's often harder than you think, but there is a flip side to that. You know, if you really have a goal and a desire that you want to achieve, then it's focusing on that achievement that you want, that you're reaching for, and just focusing on the next steps, and set yourself some milestones. We all want to know what the whole journey is going to look like, and if we knew, we probably wouldn't start. And that's the reality, and that's why, you know, it's that grit that you need to have, and you've got to have that reason why that's strong enough that is going to get you through the harder days. So yeah, for me, it's, you know, making sure that you have the right people around you as well, in terms of, you know, someone that has achieved what you want to achieve, so you can get some guidance on your journey as well.
Is support system that important? And the reason why I ask that is I'm big on support system. And there was an example that I was telling that I like to share. It's when I first got the house that I currently live in. I remember I was so happy, right? And anytime, and that's the beauty about accomplishments. When you have an accomplishment, you know, it's like, for example, you, every time you do something that you're proud of, you know exactly the people you want to share it with, right?
Yeah.
You have them on speed dial, or they're in your memory. You know exactly who you're going to tell. And that's how I was when I got my house. But what I realized, and what I had to, and this is a reflection on me because I had to reevaluate myself, was I got the home. I told certain people, I invited those people, and one of the people that I invited, and I'll never forget this, said, "Why is it, how is it that you're able to get a house and I can't?"
Mm.
And for those who have a support system, that's probably one of the most devastating things you can hear from someone that's supposed to be your support system. And I'll say why, and I'll tell you why. Anytime you have an accomplishment and you're sharing with people, your expectation, and we're going back to that, is they're going to be as happy as you are at the very least, but you always want them to be even more happy because you're drawing from their energy, right?
Mm.
So when someone turns around and they kind of talk down to it, or there's a hint of jealousy, as you mentioned, then there's no direction that that friendship, that relationship can go but down,
Yeah.
because now you feel a level of betrayal. So that goes back to my question to you is, how important is the support system? And in the example I just gave, how important is to make sure we're sharing the appropriate news with them?
And I think that's the word appropriate is the word to focus on there. So not everyone is going to get what you're doing, especially when you're doing something different. If you're entrepreneurial in any way, then you're going to have friends that are not the same and don't really understand why you're putting yourself through it, why you're working so hard, why you're doing it to yourself. But I think it's just looking at it, you know, taking a step back, looking at it from a different perspective of, if those friends are amazing, they don't, and it's not their fault if they don't really get what you're doing, but you have friends for different purposes. So there are friends that I want to go out with and I have fun, and I don't, if they're interested in what I'm doing and they ask, then I'll share, but I don't need them for that. I have coaches, I have mentors, I have entrepreneurial groups, I have surrounded myself, I've gone to networking events and found the people that understand me, that are on the same journey as me from that perspective. But it doesn't mean that I have the same level of friendship, that if something personal happens, I'm not going to be phoning my property mentor, or so I think it's just looking at things, and again, that came down to your expectations in that situation, and someone else's, you have zero control over someone else's reaction to something. And I understand the disappointment. I've had similar situations, I get it. But then it's also, thinking about it from an empathetic point of view, they are comparing themselves, they don't understand what it's taken. They have to, and an element, if it is jealousy, and it's really, you don't ever want someone to feel jealous of you. It's such a horrible emotion, but unfortunately it's quite common, and it is always going to happen, and some people will feel less, they'll feel less in your presence once you start doing more, and there's not much you can do about that. I always come down to, you're going to get judged no matter what you do, and I think this is something that comes as you get older, that inner confidence of, I'm going to get judged no matter what, someone's going to have an opinion no matter what, it's impossible to please everyone, so you just need to focus on your journey. I'm on my train. If people want to jump on board, jump on board. If you don't, then you can stay at the station. That's your option, and that's your choice, and everyone has to make their own choices. But I think some people do allow themselves to be held back and to not achieve things if they're surrounded by negativity, and that I find really sad.
Yeah, I find that to be very heartbreaking when people who, in their heart, that you may come in contact, I may come in contact, you know that they're going to be successful, but they limit their success because they don't want to impact the circle that they have around them, or that they've insulated themselves. And you mentioned your personal experiences. How did you feel then going through something similar, and how do you feel now about it? Now that you're more experienced, you're more seasoned, you're more knowledgeable.
Yeah, I mean, there's still a pang sometimes. We're human beings, we have emotions, so it will depend on the day, I guess. And I always talk about, I'm really, really real with all of this. I talk about beating the overwhelm. I'm really confident that I can help people. But at the end of the day, we're all going to have bad days, but it's about how quickly we pick ourselves up. And for me, I think it just comes down to, I'm in a position now where, when there's only certain people I'm going to share news with, but I also do have, things on social media. So some people will find out through social media, they're going to find out one way or another what I'm up to. So, but there are some that I will go out of my way to say something, and other things, but they're going to find out anyway if they follow me. If they don't follow me, then if that makes them happier, then good for them. And I think, yeah, it takes time, and that's just a process of, having belief in what you're going for, and managing that inner voice. Going back to what we were talking about in the beginning, if you can make sure that your self-belief is in the right place and you're managing your own internal dialogue in the right way, then the more you're able to block out the negativity that tries to come in, and you can, relate, and you can be empathetic, but you don't have to agree, with the actions, the comments, but you can choose to move on and not let it impact you too much.
Did you always have this type of mindset, or is this something that you kind of grew into and now you want to help others achieve it maybe a little bit faster than you did, looking back?
Yeah, I think that's definitely what it comes down to. I think when I look back at my upbringing, I potentially didn't have the easiest upbringing. You know, mixed race family in a very white village, lots of various issues that I'm not, I don't talk about too much. Um, but looking back, I think all of that, whilst it wasn't great at the time, it was potentially awful at times. And it comes down to that gave me resilience and grit. And when we talk about things that we survive and things that we overcome, when I look back, I do wonder if I'd have had a picture perfect upbringing, if I'd have ended up being the same, because I will fight for something, because I know that I got the inner strength to do it. So, when I take a moment to go, right, I know I can do this, and I don't like to lose. So, and once I set my mind to something, I guess I've always been like that a little bit, given the upbringing, I guess. But you also make choices. It's very easy to also blame your past or things that have happened to you as a reason for failing. But I think if you're going to blame situations or people for the bad things, blame them for the good things as well. Because if you've been through something, there's learnings to come from that, and it's your choice whether you want to live in the past. And if you're living in the past, your body and your brain is feeling that as if it's happening to you right now. And I think that's a really important message. Probably the most important thing I've said is for people to realize they need to look forward. And there's always someone worse off than you. There's always something you can do to improve things right now in the moment.
And that's the beauty about success, because you always remember that turning point, right? And a lot of us have it in our childhood. We're saying that, you know what, I had a childhood that was like this, or I experienced this. And that's where I made a decision saying that, you know what, I'm going to change it. I needed to
Yeah,
change it for me, because if I ever start a family, I need to make sure that they're better off than I was and they have a better starting point. Is that one of your goals with the 9 step and everything you're doing, saying that I went through this, as you mentioned, I had certain experience as a child that I want to make sure that I can improve from and have success from. Now that I have my own family, especially with two girls, where it's like, you know what? I want to create a better generation of women going forward, because I don't want them to go through necessarily what I went through, but I still want them to have a strong character.
yeah, exactly. And it's sometimes like, my daughters have a pretty good life, and I'm like, oh, you got it so easy. So it is, I'm definitely doing my best to teach them, and it's just things that we didn't even think about or even know about growing up. So whilst I mostly work with aspiring entrepreneurs, I'm really passionate about getting to people as young as possible to just really understand and just give them the message that no matter what your situation, you alone have the control to change it. No one's going to change it for you. You have every opportunity to make the life that you want, and you need to, just that inner dialogue thing, that growing up with that inner dialogue of being really mean to ourselves. um I just wish someone had said, yeah, I have that too, I have that inner voice, because you feel a bit lonely with that, when you're in your room by yourself, stuck with your inner dialogue. You don't realize that everyone else has the same thing going on. So I think that's really important, to just really understand our brains, because we don't always feel in control of our brains, that we can control our emotions, and that we have choice. I think that's just so important, for everyone to hear.
What do you, with everything that you experienced, everything you just said, what would you tell a younger version of yourself and why?
Oh, so many things. Um,
Those who, I'm bringing out the big questions from my friend here, just so you guys know.
um, oh, think for me, yeah, if someone had explained how the brain works, that I guess no matter what you're going through, you're going to come out stronger from this. There's a reason why this is happening. And that, you know, that inner voice and the empathy, like just really understanding things from someone else's point of view is so important. I think that it comes down to, yeah, that self-awareness and managing yourself as an individual. I think it would just be, yeah, start to look at things from different perspectives, learn about your brain, how it works, learn about your emotions, and learn about control and how you can change your mindset, and that no one's going to do it for you. So start making life good for yourself. Yeah, wake up every day asking how you can make today a good day would be, you know, a really good simple thing for anyone to implement into their days.